ship's going to be, you're going to lose it, everything. But we'll grab pieces of wood and whatever and float. And so they did. And he set them an example. And you know what? He's eating, he tells them to take nourishment, and then he thanks God in the midst of the storm, and then they started eating. They followed suit. He was the first to be willing. Everybody else was upset and they had the wrong kind of answer. And he said, eat. You're going to need sustenance for what's going to happen. And they did. But Paul started it because he not only told them to do it, he was doing it. And he was thanking God in the midst of a terrible storm. And then sure enough, the ship ran aground. And when it got down to, they went up on this island. And on that island, you find out at the end of it, it's the island of Malta. But Paul is there with these people. And I pulled this, I've used this picture before, a long time ago. But you see on this side in the pile of wood, there's a snake going after his hand. That's what happened. He's on the island. They swim there. Some go floating on boards. But they wind up on this little island. And it's raining. And it's cold. And they're wet. And so the people showed them a lot of hospitality. And they were building a fire. So what does Paul do? He goes and he helps gather wood to put on the fire. He does what he can. He's helping. And in the course of his actions, that snake bites. He fastens to his hand. And Paul shakes it off. And he goes on with what they're doing. The people see him and they say, he must be a bad criminal, because otherwise, he got away from the storm, but he's got this guy. He got his due, which wasn't true. And then so they watched him for a while, and nothing happened but a snake bite. Then they thought, well, he must be something special. He must not be a bad guy. He must be with the gods. And then he goes out and if you look at what he did on this island, there was the leader of the island was named Publius. And Paul was trying to help them. Remember, he's been taken as a prisoner. And he's been through this terrible storm that lasted for days and days and days. And then he goes in to visit with this guy named Publius, the leader of the island. And then he has this sick person serving in his house. And so Paul goes in there and he prays and he heals that man. And then all these folks on this little island start bringing people that are diseased and sick to be healed by Paul. So here's Paul. He's being carried as a captive, and he still knows to whom he belongs. He still knows that he's God's servant. And he uses that. He's spreading the good news, and he reaches out on that island, and he helps those people. what he could. He helped gather firewood. He helped the people be encouraged. He healed people on the island. Paul is doing everything he can to spread the news. And yet he's a prisoner. He's in custody of the Romans. And so I look at this and I think about it, and on this last slide here, I think in terms of, how about me? I put the word us up there, but us. But I think about me. If I'm in that same situation, am I going to sit around saying, whoa, woe is me? You know that song they used to do, and he held gloom, despair, and agony on me, deep, dark depression, excessive misery. If it weren't for bad luck, I'd have no love at all. Gloom, despair, agony on me. Sometimes Christians, just like others in the world, we start facing things and we get like that. Everything's bad. It's terrible. Here is Paul. He goes here and they're trying to kill him. He escapes from that one. They set a plot to try to kill him again. He tries to defend himself and they start trying to rip him apart again. And then he speaks before these different Roman officials. And every one of them he teaches the gospel to. Every one of them he talks about the Christ, the Son of the living God, because that's what he's doing. He's serving God. And so I think about it, well, if I'm in this thing like he is, am I going to remain faithful and committed even in the storms of life? I'll bet you there's some of you here, maybe most of us, I bet you have been in situations like where he was and you're struggling. It's really hard. And you're fighting hard to find a way to get through that. And those times are challenging. We shouldn't minimize them. They are hard. But we never should forget that God is still there. God is in control. And that God is the one whom we serve. I'm giving my life for him. I do what I can, whether it's gathering firewood in the cold rain or telling someone on the island why I believe. That's really, this whole lesson is just trying to get down to this point. Do we know the God to whom we belong and whom we serve? Do we do that? Do I understand God? If I do, it gives me a peace. Paul, if they looked at him, they might say, how can he be calm? How can he be at peace? All these bad things happening to him. But he still trusted God. And he said, if God says this is what's going to happen, that's what will happen. I believe in him. I know whom I have believed in. And I'm persuaded